Ever worked for a boss from hell?
How dare you? How dare you?
Don't get mad. Get even.
Now it's my turn.
Find out how.
Welcome to yet another manual transmission having episode of Rollin' Rambles. Today we need to discuss why the modern audience does not exist. One of the most common tropes you'll find in any sort of defense of garbage video games, garbage media, even just lackluster products that are existing property, but with race or gender swap. You'll often find that the defense is, oh, this is made for a modern audience. We're bringing the story to modern audiences. This is not that outdated tale. See, we've updated it for a modern audience. And invariably, everything that's made for a modern audience, that's been adapted or just generally in some way modified for a modern audience, does absolutely horribly. And invariably, they also blame the modern audience for not showing up, or not paying for the product, not flocking to see the latest slop that was made for the modern audience. The ungrateful, uneducated, racist, awful, bigoted modern audience. The modern audience that they supposedly made the product for some reason, doesn't want the product. Isn't that interesting? How does this happen? How do you end up with a product that is made for you that you don't want? Well, the simple answer is it's not made for you. I had to tweak the camera angle a little. Sorry about that. Modern audiences do not exist because everything that is claimed to be for a modern audience is not made for a modern audience. It's made for people who are so full of themselves and so sure that they're right and that they're smarter than everyone else and that sniff their own farts to save the environment. These people, they are so self-centered that they think that their sensibilities are the intelligent, sensible, progressive, futuristic, that they are the arbiters of what is good and what is not. That anything that they think is right or correct, any of that, that's what people want if they're smart, you see. And that's always the part that's left out. It's actually a value judgment. The whole modern audience thing is really just judgy pants. It's really just looking down on other people that don't think the way they do. But the thing is, how could you not think the way they do? Because they're correct. They're always correct. Never mind the fact that nobody pays for the product. Nobody wants any of this slop. For some reason, modern audiences don't show up. Modern audiences don't make money. Things that are made for modern audiences can't attract modern audiences. And that's because it's all just political garbage. The truth is, the same stuff that was appealing in the past, before the enlightened modernity took over, the same stuff that people liked in the 2000s, in the 90s, in the 80s, even in the 60s and 40s, that stuff still works today. Good stories are not bad stories just because they're dated. Granted, they can be a little harder to understand because you may not get references. Everybody grows up in a culture, and sometimes that culture, it changes over time, and what you live in now is not necessarily what is going on or what was going on back then. Maybe it might be a little difficult for kids these days to watch an old movie with a wired phone and go, why don't they just pull out their cell phone? Cell phones have kind of ruined movies, but that's the thing. The culture, while things may change over time, in general, what makes a good story does not. Yes, trends exist. Yes, we went through a long phase where everything was a damn first-person military shooter, which actually I blame directly for me losing all interest in all game consoles. I am not joking when I say this. The 2000s and everything becoming a first-person military shooter, like that being what everybody played, made me completely lose interest in playing consoles. Now, granted, I know there are other games out there, but good God, it got so tiresome. Everything had to be a first-person shooter. Nobody cared about anything else. And it was a weird time, and I just saw it, and I had no interest in it, and it sort of pushed me away. I found other things to be interested in, and I just stopped playing consoles. But anyway, I got away from the topic a bit. The point here is that the modern audience is not real. It is a myth that's cooked up to defend a bad product, to defend something that was created improperly. Whenever discussing things on the internet, particularly scientific things such as nutrition, health, that kind of stuff, where you need scientific evidence to support things, and the correct way to do it is form a hypothesis. You've probably studied in school. You probably know the scientific method. Form a hypothesis, create, put together an experiment with dependent variable and independent variables, run the experiment, and draw conclusions from the results. It's a pretty straightforward process. Unfortunately, it's also completely thrown around, reversed, put on its head by people that I refer to as scientism, or science worshipers, people who basically do the reverse scientific method, which instead of form hypothesis, set up and conduct experiment, draw conclusions, they start with conclusions, put together experiment, and then present experiment that was specifically crafted to validate conclusions, which typically means that there's nothing to stop what they want the conclusion to be from being the conclusion. And these garbage studies, if you can even call them that, are not worth the paper that they are sharded out upon. Likewise, you find that in literature, media, games, in any form of artistic entertainment project, it doesn't matter, any form of media, you find that sort of the media analog of the reverse scientific method is being done today. And it's being done, and its defense is modern audiences. This is what people want, because that's what is modern. Well, how do they create these things that are for modern audiences that supposedly are better than all the things in the past? Despite everything in the past that's been successful, what is this new way? The new way is, rather than starting with a narrative and driving the politics of the story based on where the narrative needs to go, they start with the politics, and then they write the narrative in service towards those politics. Now, I'm not saying that this is a completely invalid way to write a story, but it mostly is an invalid way to write a story. It is possible to start out with the idea, I want to write a story that extols the virtues of my ideas and way of thinking. At the same time, if you write such a story, while the idea came as from a political basis, the actual story still has to be written in the way that any good story is written. It still has to have a narrative crafted, and that narrative cannot be crafted just as a ham-handed, heavy, just punch him in the face, hard-nosed, like, you need to believe this, and if you don't, you're a moron sort of way. Nobody wants to be preached to by their entertainment. You don't get the point across that way. Nobody's going to engage with something if it converts from an exercise in fiction to a lecture where you're being scolded as if you're a child with an abusive parent that just won't stop giving you crap for every last thing that you do that they perceive as wrong, no matter how stupid that idea of being wrong actually is. And that really is the fundamental problem with the so-called modern audience. It is not a real audience. The only people that would actually count as the modern audience are the people who have the same politics, totally agree with them, and are equally as fanatical. That's a very small cross-section of the population that we're talking about. You're talking about making a product that caters to a small percentage of a small percentage of people, like a tiny fraction of a percent of the crowd. So whenever you get mad at a bunch of people who don't buy the game, they must be sexist or racist or homophobic or transphobic, whatever, just because you overwrote a bunch of characters in you just took an existing story, glued some different color characters over the existing one or whatever, and went, look at this new, original, much better, up-to-date tale that I have made. Oh, and by the way, the romance story I ripped off, I threw the romance part out of the romance story, and instead we have it where the romance is gone, and the person just... The story exists to say this person is good exactly as they are and don't need to change, and everything revolves around them. You throw out the conflict and basically the story, glue some black people and women on top and maybe some trans people for fun, and then you use those categories of people as shields for your garbage story because you've thrown the story out. It's not even really a story. It's just this person exists, nothing changes. There's nothing of value for you to get invested in. This person exists, and at the end, they still exist, and nothing has happened. Oh, and you wonder why the modern audiences aren't coming out to give you money for a story that doesn't do anything. Nobody wants to be preached to. Nobody wants to go into fiction and see a bunch of ugly, fat, angry, bitter people that stomp everybody else around them. And go, I want to be that person. I want to be the person that everybody doesn't like, but I beat the crap out of them if they look at me the wrong way. That's who I want to be. I want to be disliked by everybody and rule them through fear. Most people, even people that you consider to be bad, still want to be liked by other people. There are very few people that are that sociopathic. And that's part of the problem, is that nobody wants to identify with trash. Nobody wants to identify with the worst in society. And what does it say about you, about how you think about people? If, for example, you shoehorn a black person into a film that is an established thing, you mangle the story and you say, if you don't like this, it's because you hate black people. It's not because I took the story out back and beat it with a hammer and now there's not really a story. There's nothing that really happens, like that the person can't be harmed. They just punch through everybody that gets in the way. Like, oh, you must be racist. That's the shield. Like, you're using these people as a shield so that you can make your garbage non-story. And it's really exploitation if you think about it. And how insulting is it? How insulting is it that if you take an existing story and you beat it to death just to do a little bit of swapping and go, hey, look, it's a story for this category of people, and anybody who doesn't like it hates this category of people. Why can't you just write them a new story, man? Oh, that's right, because you can't write a story. Because if you're the kind of person who starts with a political agenda and then goes, let's write a story whose entire purpose is to punch this agenda into people, you're not able to write a good story, or even a lackluster story. You probably didn't make it very far in school when it came to writing creative essays or whatever. There's a good chance that you have nothing of value to say to anyone. And the problem, I think, is that people give you money and time and power and prestige at companies that give you established properties to do this to, not because you're good or qualified or capable, but because they're afraid of what will happen if they don't show that they're towing the line. And one of the greatest things, this is being filmed in December 2024, and one of the greatest things about Donald Trump winning the 2024 presidential election in the United States is that now people see that this man won by a landslide, and they see it as a hallmark against this kind of garbage. You know, in 2020, we were threatened with violence and destruction and harm, loss of jobs, loss of income, loss of family and friends, and, you know, just there was all this threat going around, and it was the same people that that make things for modern audiences that were behind it all. So the American people were bullied. The entire Western world has been bullied for, frankly, a decade at this point, possibly longer. If you want to go all the way back to like Atheism Plus and Elevator Gate, Dongle Gate, we're talking 2012, not 2014. Everybody thinks of Gamergate in 2014, but it actually goes back to 2012. And before that, it was a problem even then. I wrote articles for my garbage personal website back in 2009 about how illegal immigrants needed to get out of the country. The problems have been around for a long time. These garbage people that have these garbage ideas and do their best to bully other people into towing the line and following what they say, they've been around since before I was born. And it's not going to just go away. But the thing is, the landslide election of Donald Trump made it clear that, okay, while we'll still elect a bunch of Democrat governors everywhere else, the people that are the figureheads, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the Democrat figureheads behind, all these bad policies that promoted, rioting and just general really bad behavior, criminality, just all of this feminist, social justice, woke, Marxist, whatever label you choose to pick, whatever subsection you choose to slice, all of this radical ideology being not so normalized that it ran the United States government for 4 years straight. Arguably more than that if you want to go into, the latter part of Trump's first term. But Trump's election indicated these people, they're done. The American people are done with this crap. We are tired of it. We don't want to deal with it anymore. And it's not just, it's one thing when you're told, hey, you don't want to be racist, come support us in our race struggle. And at first it's like, okay, well, you sound like you have a legitimate, concerns, I'm with you. But then it becomes, give us money. If you don't give us money, you're racist. Now, wait a minute. Why are you demanding that I give you money? Why are you threatening me with reputational harm if I don't pay you? Wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. I was here to support you, but now you're telling me that you're threatening me if I don't give you resources. It's okay, we'll just get you fired. They go up to companies, we'll get you fired. These are the people that have been running things for a long time, claiming that they're the adults in charge, and they're not. They're not even remotely adults in charge. They don't understand anything about how things actually work, what people actually think or feel, how humanity actually works. These are the people that made everything for the past decade for modern audiences. By modern, they mean you do what we say, and that's it. The modern audience does not exist. The concept of a modern audience has been rejected wholeheartedly, resoundingly, unequivocally. Maybe that's not the right word, but just it's almost a unanimous rejection across all forms of media, across the political aisle, just all of it. The modern audience is not accepted any longer because it doesn't exist and never existed. It was always garbage, and it's always been a bullying tactic. It's always been a combination of shield against criticism and a bullying tactic. How dare you, we're going to come after you. And it's falling apart because at some point you reach people's limits, and those limits have long been surpassed. No means no. Back off. The modern audience is dead, but they never existed in the first place. And finally, what we are seeing is normal people who do their best to follow the path of least resistance, which is why a lot of these bad ideologies are allowed to creep in, by the way. They do whatever feels the safest, whatever goes with the flow, doesn't cause conflict, is the easiest, simplest, whatever way seems like they can just move past it, even if it violates their principles, and just move past it without dealing with conflict, because conflict's expensive. If you have a conflict with another human, it could escalate into violence. You could be harmed or killed. It's dangerous to have conflict with other people. So a lot of people just go with what they perceive the flow to be. And unfortunately, at some point, when the flow is, well, you've been unemployed for years and we've been lying to you people snap. It's happening with media now. The whole concept of a modern audience is toast. Thank God. Thank God they've been put in their graves. Anyway, that's basically it as far as modern audiences go. The lie of them, anyway. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. Tell me what you think about modern audiences and crybullies forcing the notion down other people's throats in the comments section. Thanks for watching. Take care.